Well, hello and welcome to today's HIPAA Chat. I'm Carol Fly with HITech Answers. Thanks for joining us today. If you're new to HIPAA Chat, sit back and relax. We've got a great hour ahead here with a special guest on board. And if you're coming back to HIPAA Chat, you're a repeat. Thank you for your attendance and your support. Today we are talking about 2017 Internet Security Threat Report for Healthcare, second annual report released by Symantec, some of the findings in that report and what that means to healthcare, and then of course we'll spend time answering questions for David and David. HIPAA Chat is sponsored by eFax Corporate, a brand of J2 Cloud Services. J2 is an award-winning provider of internet services through its two divisions, its Business Cloud Services and Digital Media. For more information, please visit them at enterprise.efax.com. HIPAA Chat is hosted by David Harlow. He's a healthcare lawyer with 25 years of public and private sector experience. Of course, he has a big focus on digital health law and policies related to HIPAA and works with providers, analytics shops, developers, vendors, and companies of all sizes. You can contact him at david@harlowgroup.net, read his blog, healthblog, blawg.com, and of course follow him at Twitter at healthblog. We have a very special guest today. David Finn is a Health IT Officer of Symantec. He has a role and background as a CIO of Texas Children's Hospital. He has a deep understanding of what is going on in the security space today, specifically in cybersecurity as well, and is a longtime friend of HITech Answers and Answers Media. Please follow him at Twitter at David S. Finn. If you're interested in looking at past events for HIPAA Chat, you can go to our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and Google HITech Answers channel, HIPAA Chat will come up, or Google HIPAA Chat. You can also download podcasts on Healthcare Now Radio, our website station, and you can listen to the live stream of it at 12 noon and 7 p.m. at healthcarenowradio.airtime.pro. And finally, please follow us on LinkedIn in our HIPAA Chat group, where we're answering questions about HIPAA. So as we go along here, please use the question box found on the GoToWebinar dashboard to pose a question for our two Davids. David Harlow, welcome back as host of HIPAA Chat. David Finn, thank you so much for attending today. Obviously, you know, with ransomware incidents, of course, the recent WannaCry, a huge worldwide hack that you guys, some breaking news recently about that. You're following that closely, obviously, and you know these things that have sort of came up as trends in your 2017 Internet Security Threat Report for Healthcare. I read that report, I looked through it, it looks like a lot of things need to be done. There were some high notes, of course. I think some progress, as the report mentions, as far as, you know, resources healthcare is devoting to health IT security, but obviously there's a cautionary tale sort of running through the theme of the overall report. So with that, you know, we should perhaps talk about that first, and what's going on in the industry, and of course these recent breaking news items, and then we can start taking some questions from our audience.
Very good. Yeah, it was the Internet Security Threat Report this year was as interesting as ever, and without sounding like an advertisement, I'll just point out that it is based every year on 12 months of data collection and analysis from our Global Intelligence Network, which is the largest civilian intelligence network in the world. We track over 700,000 global adversaries. We record about 98 million attack sensors, data from those sensors, and we monitor threat activities in over 157 countries. So there's a lot of data there. And I think the most fascinating theme that emerged that we didn't anticipate, and clearly a lot of other people didn't anticipate, is this idea of what we call living off the land. Historically, attacks have been, you know, kind of sophisticated and 0 days, and people have collected 0 days and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars buying those or writing code. And in 2016, we saw this kind of amazing shift where the bad guys are using whatever tools are on hand, like Word documents and email and PowerShell, which is a Microsoft utility that lives on almost every Windows machine, and other legitimate network and operating system tools and features to attack. And it's taking advantage of what users already have in their own environment. And it's things that, because they're already there, most of us aren't, including security professionals, aren't really suspicious of. So that's kind of the overriding theme we've seen.
So David, with that kind of intro, what's the takeaway? You say we're sort of we're sanguine about the tools that we already use, and we're looking out for threats coming in new packages, but you're saying that the existing tools that we use that are on our computers already are the source of many of these vulnerabilities. What's a person to do?
The best thing to do is turn off your computers and unplug, but that is probably not going to happen.
Okay, next guest.
Yeah, not going to happen.
Shortest HIPAA chat in history.
So I'll start with probably the biggest one, and one of the trends we did see last year is email actually became the weapon of choice. It was the most used weapon to attack. And when you look at email, I mean, obviously you can't stop that, but we hear it over and over again. We've got to train our users to be aware of what is happening. You know, one of the statistics that came out of that Internet Security Threat Report is you have a 1 in 317 chance of winning a Powerball lottery, a $7 payoff. That's a pretty small payoff. 1 in 317, but there's a 1 in 131 chance that your email is going to be either include malware, have malware attached, or it will include links to malware. Now, 131 email messages really probably isn't that much for most of us, and when you think that 1 out of every 131 emails has got malware in it, attached to it, or embedded in it, we have a big problem, and that's why it's important to talk to the end users. And that's the highest rate we've seen in 5 years of malware being of malicious email. And the bad guys have gotten really excellent at crafting these emails. And it kind of starts with the language, the subject, the to, from, and the attachments. And then we get into the social engineering. So a happy thing for most of us, I guess, is English is the language of choice. 89% of the major malware spam campaigns are written in English. And the next highest level is German, and that's only 3%. So you can see the English-speaking countries are clearly targeted. And as they build these emails, obviously they start with the language. It's English because they're coming after English speakers. And then you get into the subject line, and as we looked at malware, malicious emails, we found that they almost all relate to finance. And so they'll have a subject line of invoice or bill or payment. And so those are things that trigger people. They want to make sure they're getting their bills paid, or if they've got a new invoice, they want to get it patched, paid for, taken care of. And so these are great hooks. And as you move from the subject line to the to and from, they're frequently spoofing senders from well-known companies or executives in your own company or local businesses, local leaders that they've done some homework on and they know they're likely to get those opened. And then there's the attachments, and we used to see kind of weird executables, and people got smart to that. And so we are seeing most of these attachments as Word files or Excel files. And most of us believe that those files are pretty harmless. We all get Word files. We all get spreadsheets. And so then we've seen a return, oddly enough, of the macros. A few years back, even up to 20 years back, macros were frequently used to infect machines. So now they're putting a macro in the machine and using in the file and using a little social engineering to trick the user into enabling macros, and then the infection is out.
So David, there's a couple of different defense mechanisms that we use and that some of us rely on in terms of dealing with malware payloads and email. And I'm thinking specifically about, software spam filters. Also thinking about appliances that are going to be installed as a part of a network firewall, etc. So that other emails that might not be caught by a software spam filter will be caught by the appliance. And as you described, the real issue here is human factors. That's our biggest vulnerability in the healthcare industry. And we need more training of individuals who receive email, which is basically everybody. And as part of that training, I always like to emphasize the importance of sending fake spam emails to people and see if they open them and click on things. And instead of having a malware payload, the payload is education. And that's one way I think that can be productive in terms of trying to reach people and teach a lesson that sticks. Is it your sense, does your research show that through appropriate use of software and hardware filters, we can reduce that number from 1 in 130 emails that come through that are potentially laden with malware to some lower figure?
Absolutely. You have to have the tools. You have to use filtering. You have to look at encrypted traffic that's coming in. You have to understand where and when email's coming in. You have to understand it contextually. And there's lots of tools for doing that. Unfortunately, the bad guys only have to be right once. And on our end, we have to be right every time. One mistake is the one that can shut our operations down. So while you have to have the tools, and it will shift the odds for you, at the end of the day, it really does become a personnel training issue. And one of the example I like to use, and it was human error on top of human error, but the DNC breach of John Podesta's email is kind of an interesting story. And they used his cloud persona. We've got this cloud generation, and they looked at his Facebook accounts and his Twitter accounts and saw what he was interested in and topics, and sent him an email from his Google email account. They knew he had a Google email account, and it looked real, and he was smart enough to check and make sure that it was. So he sent that email to his admin, who sent it on to IT. He's doing everything right at this point. Although he could, you can hold your mouse over a link or an email address and get the full address. But the bad guys are getting pretty clever at that. So he was suspicious enough, sent it on, and then got a response back from IT via his admin. And the first sentence in the email back from IT said, "This is a legitimate email. John needs to change his password immediately and ensure two-factor authentication is turned on," and all that stuff. but the security guy who sent the email left a key word out of the first sentence. It was not a legitimate email. It said this is a legitimate email. He had left the word not out. So instead of reading the full email with the correct link to change his password, he went back to the original phishing link, which then captured his credentials, and I think the rest is history. Many people believe that we would have a different president if that hadn't happened, but it's, you know, there's still human error, and the way we read email, because we tend not to read through to the end, and if he had read the full email, he might have caught on that it wasn't legitimate. But he read the first sentence, and the poor analyst at the DNC left out the word not. And as I said, the rest was history.
Right, right. So the lesson here is that you just can't be careful enough. The stakes are so high, and we need to devote additional resources in many ways in order to avoid becoming the latest victim. In healthcare, it seems that the most significant exploit has been ransomware of one sort or another. Certainly in the news recently, though it hasn't hit healthcare in the U.S., the WannaCry exploit. But it's my sense, and I think others would agree, that this is a continual issue in healthcare over the past year or so, and we don't hear very many stories about it. What we hear is really the tip of the iceberg. Would you share that sense, David?
Yeah, absolutely. What we see in the media about ransomware is only a tip of the iceberg, and it's a big scary topic. We saw in our report a 36% increase in ransomware attacks from 2015 through 2016. And people only continue to do this if it's highly profitable, so the ransomware bills are getting paid. And because they now sell ransomware as a service on the dark web, there's a really low barrier to entry. You used to have to be pretty good. You kind of had to know the ins and outs and be able to write code and be able to set up back-end payment systems. And so it reduced the number of people who could participate. But with these ransomware as a service platforms on the dark web, anyone can do this now. And we're seeing more and more of the ransomware. In 2014 and 2015, we saw 30 new ransomware families each year. In 2016, that number leapt to over 101 new ransomware families. So there is money to be made, and as long as people will pay it, it's going to be a problem.
Right, and to your point, there's been a lot of press about the WannaCry exploit. That once you dig into the details there, it seems to have been a fairly amateurish exploit and has not seemed to have gained a whole lot of dollars for the originators of that exploit.
Yeah, there's actually some researchers who believe that was a development project that escaped from the lab before they were ready. They had the kill switch information still in the code, and that saved us a lot of problems, I believe, in this country. And their back-end payment system actually wasn't set up. So globally, when you look at the 300,000 or so machines that were impacted, they've taken in less than $100,000 globally. So there is a belief that that wasn't quite ready. The flip side of that is if it wasn't quite ready, someone's going to see what caused it to fail and fix those shortcomings. And I suspect there'll be a pivot on that software. We saw a lot of variants of WannaCry coming out, and people making tweaks in it right afterwards, but by that time, because the back end wasn't done, the kill switch had been executed, a lot of people took that extra time they got to do their patches and to get caught up. So WannaCry in this particular version may be done, but I would not count it out at this point.
Right.
Right.
So what is it with Windows XP? I mean, I love Windows XP as much as the next guy, but you know, there's a limit.
Yeah,
why are we still using XP in healthcare?
This is an age-old problem, and I think what we found is it isn't just healthcare, but there is a message, I think, for everyone, and that is the threat landscape, the way we do business over the last 5 years, the degree of automation and digitization of all industries has so increased and changed. And again, we tend not to address security. And if you don't do the security up front when you're developing operating systems or